Hi, welcome to Translating Interview Speak, what your interviewer really wants to know, Chapter 11 of 13. In today's session, you're going to learn interview stages and translations before, during, and after the interviews. We're Barbara Limmer and Laura Brown, authors of Interview Speak, what your interviewer really wants to know, and we want to help you with your next interview. So let's talk about different stages of the hiring process. Most organizations include some sort of initial first screening and also include others who are connected to the position. We'll talk about different people that might be involved. And this can vary greatly depending on the company and the hiring manager preferences. So there is no one way that you will see. Every company has different processes. Let's first talk about the first screening. Now, the first screening might be with a live person. And basically, it really is to find out, after they take a look at your resume or the information you put online, are you the kind of person that they want to move forward? You could have this with a junior talent acquisition person, or maybe it's with an external recruiting firm, maybe it's a staffing agency, maybe it's even with a hiring manager. That's not that usual. And usually it's by phone or video. They want to decide should they even bring you in. Now, the other way, it might be a one-way recorded interview or with AI. And employers are starting to use these to save time and resources. And some systems just use AI to assess the candidates, including reviewing your verbal responses and nonverbal behavior. So it's interesting. A lot of people don't like the one-way recorded interviews. I actually like them, and I'll tell you why. And I've gone through a number of them. That in a way they can be easier. So what typically happens is you get set up and you have to answer a question. And a lot of times it will ask you the question and say, you have 30 seconds to think about the answer. And then you have a minute or a minute 30 or some other time to answer it. So first of all, most of the time, not all the time, it gives you a chance to pause and think, which can make it easier. And it tells you how long you have. They don't say you have 10 minutes, keep going. It normally is you have a minute or you have a minute and a half or 2 minutes, whatever it is, it tells you when you're going to stop. And occasionally it says, and if you want to redo it, hit this button and you can redo it. Now, even if you want to redo it, sometimes it doesn't work, so you don't want to lean on that. But when you're thinking about a recorded interview, they can actually have some positive parts of it. But in any case, you're going to have some sort of initial screening with a live person or recorded to help them decide should they move you forward. Then chances are you're going to have a meeting with HR or talent acquisition. Now, that might be the first screening, or it might be after the first screening. And typically, if you're talking to somebody in HR or talent, you're going to have probably basic questions, but you never know. You need to be ready for an in-depth interview, including all the questions we talked about in chapter 2. They may or may not follow a script, especially if they're a newer person, they're probably going to be following a script. And remember, these are gatekeepers with the power to decide if you get to interview with anybody else. So you want to be likable and build rapport. And again, their fear is if I move this person on and let them go to the next step and maybe let them talk to the manager, is that going to look good? Or are they going to say, why did you move that person? So you want to make sure that you show up, give the best answers you possibly can, and get them to like you. What's their mindset? Do you have the basic qualifications for this job? Does it match your interest and career goals? Remember, we talked about the fact, are you excited and interested and motivated by this job? Will you stay for the long term, or are you going to quit after 6 months? Are you a fit for our organization's culture? Again, will you make them look bad if they recommend you to the hiring manager?
So, another stage in the interview process is, of course, meeting with the hiring manager. And when we say that, we are referring to your direct boss in this position that you're interviewing for. It may be the first interview or it may be later in the process. And in this interview, they will very likely ask you more detailed questions on what you've done and how, what results you've achieved, and specifically how you've added value to the team, the department, and the company as a whole. Their mindset is, will you be successful in this position? Will you be easy to train and manage? Essentially, they're thinking, are you going to make my job easier or harder? And of course, why should I hire you as opposed to all of the other candidates out there? It's become extremely common for peers to this position to be involved in the interview process, and they get involved to help determine whether you'd fit with the team. For technical roles, they may even test your technical knowledge. Like, does this person really know what they say they know based on their resume or their LinkedIn profile? And their mindset is, what are you going to be like to work with? Do you play well with others? In other words, are you a team player? And will you make our jobs easier because we can depend on you, or harder because you'll be unreliable and we'll then have to do your work in addition to our own? So that's their mindset. Another potential interviewer that you might have is your boss's boss. And by that, we mean the person to whom your boss reports. Now, this could be a basic get to know you type of interview or a rubber stamp, like they just need to approve you as the preferred candidate. But guess what? It could also be a much more in-depth interview. So you've got to be prepared. Now, their mindset is, will you fit with the overall culture of the organization? And what is your eventual promotability based on how you communicate and how you present yourself? You may have a panel interview, which could be virtual or a group of people all in one room. And the panel typically includes various stakeholders to the open position. Might be people in other departments. It might include your hiring manager. HR or talent acquisition might be there as well. Might include peers or even clients and direct reports. Now, their mindset matches what we said previously for peers, for hiring manager, for boss's boss. So review what we said and be prepared. Now, the best thing to do is to find out who will be on this panel and what is their relationship to the open role so that you can anticipate what kinds of questions they might ask you based on their role. So next we move on to translating other things interviewers say. And we're going to talk about before the interview, during the interview, and after the interview. So first, let's talk about before the interview. You might receive all sorts of messages. Here are some. We received your application and will notify you if there is interest. The translation of that means, do not contact us because we received hundreds of applications. Another message you could receive, we'd like to invite you to interview for the X position. What that really means is, congratulations, you made it past our screening system. You may also receive a message, thank you for your interest. Although your background is impressive, we have other candidates whose backgrounds more closely match our needs. What does that mean? Sorry, but you didn't make it past our resume or application screening system. Now, during the interview, you might get these kinds of messages. The first one is, thank you, that was a good answer. The translation is, I acknowledge the end of your answer. In other words, just because they say that doesn't mean it actually was a good answer. You might receive a message, we're still interviewing other candidates and we'll let you know when we're ready to move to the next step. What that really means is, I do not yet know if you'll be selected for the next round, or it could also mean it's doubtful that you'll make it to the next round. A message you might receive is, you'll be notified within the next X number of weeks. What that really means is, it is my hope that we'll know something by the next X number of weeks. Do not count on that. And don't be disappointed if it takes longer than that, because they're just hoping, they're not committing. Another message you might get, when are you available to start? Guess what that means? We're very interested in you and will want you to start quickly. So that actually is a very strong buy sign.
After the interview, here are some messages you might receive. You might hear, we are still interviewing other candidates and will notify you of the next steps. The translation, we have not yet decided who will move on to the next round, and this is taking longer than we expected. Another one, you have been selected for the next round of interviews. Congratulations, you get to continue to interview for the position. Or, unfortunately, you might hear, thank you for the time you spent with us. We have other candidates whose backgrounds more closely match our needs. We'll keep your information on file. Well, sorry, but you didn't make it past the last round. We may or may not keep your information active. So if you see another position of interest, please apply. I actually heard of this happening just recently. Somebody applied for a position, didn't get it. Another very similar position opened up in the company. He applied for it right away because they did not contact him, and he ended up getting it. So don't sit back and wait. That was chapter 11. What's next? Chapter 12. How to deal with bad interviewers and really good ones. And you're going to find out how to deal with a poker-faced interviewer, the lackadaisical or disinterested interviewer, the talkative interviewer, the interviewer who asks very few questions, the inexperienced interviewer, or the highly experienced interviewer. Thank you so much. Please like and share. And don't forget, you can get a discount at Manning.com. We look forward to seeing you at the next video.